Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Shanique Banks, Director of Development and Workforce Initiative for the Philadelphia Energy Authority. Welcome to the Bright Solar Future curriculum rollout. We are so excited to share this curriculum with you today. We have our experts at the table and some wonderful tools to share with you. We are going to offer a one-of-a-kind 1,080-hour CTE training, solar installer training with an accelerated 680-hour out-of-school adult training model for those institutions that are training institutions. We are so excited to share this with you. It is my pleasure to bring up our president and CEO, Emily Shapiro.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're very excited to have you here today. Shanique, do you want me to roll through slides at this point?
Sure. You could just say next slide.
Okay. Next slide. Okay, great. Well, my job here today is to share a bit about how we started this program in the first place. Next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about the Philadelphia Energy Authority. You don't have to have an energy authority to be able to do this, but we are lucky to have a really unique way of existing in the universe. We're a municipal authority, so we were created by our city government. And our mission really is to build a robust and equitable clean energy economy in our city. We've created really a national model that has two components. We call them Equity First and this programs plus workforce. So every time we develop a project or a program in energy efficiency or clean energy, we develop workforce programs that attach to those. And that means that we are able to focus in on who is able to benefit from this transition to clean energy. In particular, we're targeting underserved, high unemployment communities. Typically in Philadelphia, those are lower income and minority communities. And we've been extremely lucky to have had a number of years now with really incredible students who are very eager to go into this field. We also put equity first in all of our programs. So rather than sort of leaving that till the end, we look at how can we design scalable programs and projects that benefit the communities that have been most harmed by our reliance on fossil fuels over generations, and ensure that they can really lead this clean energy transition. And I'm happy to follow up with anyone to share more examples of that. In 2016, with the leadership of our City Council President, Daryl Clark, we launched the Philadelphia Energy Campaign, which is a commitment to invest $1 billion over 10 years to create 10,000 jobs in clean energy. And I'm really proud to say we are on track for that $1 billion. We've counted about $300 million in projects that we've developed in the first 5 years, created about 2,500 jobs. And we have a fantastic pipeline of about $900 million of projects. So we're excited we will likely meet this goal about a year early. Next slide, please. So when we knew we wanted to start workforce development programs, we were really lucky that in Philadelphia, there were already pioneers doing solar installer training, even before there was really a significant solar market in Philadelphia. Our friends Solar States, who are on this call today, had been leading a curriculum that they called Find Your Power. And it was really supported by the Clean Air Council, local nonprofit, and Youth Build Charter School, which is a really incredible organization doing green building curriculum for young people finishing high school. And we ran Find Your Power through very small federal grants. So we got, excuse me, a little bit of money from the Solar in Your Community Challenge from the US Department of Energy. I think that first grant was $15,000. And that helped us put together a summer curriculum that was able to be led by Solar States. We were able to sort of leverage all of the things that they had put together before, and really bring on other partners and other trainers for other components, and really start to bring folks from the school district of Philadelphia to get exposure to solar. Next slide, please. In 2018, we started to get a little bit more money from DOE, from some technical assistance, and decided we're going to have to build a solar market here so all these kids can get employed. And so for the next couple of years, we continued to run these summer programs. On the bottom is one of our graduations from those programs. And we launched Solarize Philly also with a quite small grant from the US Department of Energy. I believe it was $35,000 at the time. Solarize Philly is essentially consumer confidence building. So we negotiate discounted prices with local installers. We vet those installers and their contracts and sort of hold them accountable. We work closely with our local utility and our permitting office to hold them accountable as well. And since the launch of Solarize Philly, we've helped over 1,200 households put solar on their roofs. That includes about 150 low and moderate income households so far, and a lot more to come. We were extremely excited to be the winners of a Workforce Innovation Award from the Department of Energy's Solar Energy Technologies Office. Now, 3 years ago, it ends literally tomorrow, after 3 long years of working on this. And that's really where we got the funding to develop this full curriculum, which is now public domain, and we're extremely happy to share it with you. So over these 3 years, we did 2 things, as Shanique mentioned. We launched a full 3-year career and technical education program at Frankford High School, which is approved by our State Department of Education. I'm happy to talk more about what that process looked like. It's approved as a single program of study, so it is not automatically available to every other district in the state yet. But it is available to the School District of Philadelphia, and that unlocks federal Perkins dollars that pay for the teacher and some of the lab build out and some of the other resources that the CTE office is able to share. I think next slide, is there one more here? Yeah, and then we added this sort of second tier as well. So there's an organization here in Philly called PowerCore PHL, incredible organization that does really sort of deep engagement with folks who are or underemployed, who have typically had some interaction with the justice system. And, you know, we took it from this summer program. We actually also had a once a week offsite school year program that we tried, and transformed this whole thing into either this full 3-year CTE program, or there's another option with PowerCore for 680 hours of training. So I'm really excited we can be here with all of our partners and friends to share more about what that looks like. And next slide, please. Awesome. Shanique, do you want me to do this section still?
Yes, this is Emily still, I believe, yes.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. Okay. So as you're looking at your school districts to think about how can you form a brand new CTE program, this was something the school district had done before. This was not a first as far as developing a new CTE program, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work. The State Department of Education here required a ton of things from us. And we were very happy to put that all together. We formed an occupational advisory committee, which is something you have to do in Pennsylvania, but something I would recommend anywhere, where we're bringing professionals in the field together to really advise and inform that curriculum and tell us what they need students to know so that they can be career ready. And then working with the district, they hired a teacher full-time for the CTE program and launched the program. This is the 3rd year now, so we have 10th, 11th, and 12th graders all at the same time. Next slide. Okay, so I love this top picture because this is the solar lab ribbon cutting at Frankford High School from last year. So basically, this lab was, 1, expensive, Two, we have the full plans and everything. So if anybody needs that, we're happy to share it. And we could not use our Department of Energy funding for that because there are certain requirements that come along with federal funding. And we wanted to make sure that the school owned that equipment, that the district owned that equipment and had, all the rights to do with it what they needed to do over the years. We had help from a lot of partners, our occupational advisory committee, our teacher, Jordan Crawley, our advisors and instructors, Micah Gold-Markell from Solar States and his amazing staff, and all of our friends and partners. We had a lot of extra funding from a lot of other folks that some who had been with us since the very beginning, like PECO, who had funded that very first summer of Find Your Power with us, and has sort of been there all along the way. But also we're able to raise money from a whole host of other folks, whether it was actual cash or in-kind support. For example, the National Electrical Contractors Association gave us $10,000 in electrical work, which was incredibly helpful in this space. And we went through all the complicated procurement of building things inside of a high school. Next slide, please. There are a few other components to think about as you're doing this. So just because you get the federal Perkins funding does not mean that now you're all set and you don't need to do anything else. In our market in particular, solar is growing super quickly. There's huge demand for these employees, but there's not as much awareness as there can be, and there's not as many resources out there as there can be as we continue to grow. And so we really found as that market changes, as there are new demands, we need to make sure we're continuing to supplement that program, provide our teacher with the latest and greatest knowledge, provide folks in the industry who can come in and talk to our students, field trips, you name it. There's always something that needs a bit more fundraising and resource supplements. So assume that some organization will have to continue to support that for some number of years. And then, really this notion of finding sustainable long-term funding, I just want to really impress upon everybody. The Perkins funding is game-changing for the school district program, but for our young adults through PowerCorps, it's really critical that we find that sort of multi-year, really committed, significant long-term funding. This is deep engagement for a small volume of people, and we do that on purpose because that is what it takes to really transform the access of this generation to this field. And so, it takes more funding per person, but the outcomes are really incredible. Next slide, please. Okay, and I think at this point, I will pass it back to Shanique and our amazing team to talk about curriculum. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Emily. It's my pleasure to introduce Micah Gold-Markell from Solar States. Micah.
Thanks, Shanique, and thank you so much, Emily. We can go to the next slide. It's been a real privilege and honor to be a part of this. I think really one of the big takeaways from this is how important it is to have collaborative efforts. And by that, I mean, we have private industry, we have public organizations like the Philadelphia Energy Authority, and then we have nonprofits like PowerCorps and ECA and Youth Build and so many great organizations, the School District of Philadelphia. So many wonderful organizations have been involved that, it takes a village to make something successful or to raise a child. But in this instance, it really took a village to make this successful. As Emily mentioned, we started out with the Find Your Power curriculum, but PEA saw this sort of nascent effort of us trying to educate Philadelphians in the ways of solar installation and said, we need to really scale this thing up, and we need to make sure that it gets to all of the people who need it. And they've been incredibly successful in doing that. So I just wanted to make sure that point is very clear, that it really is a group effort, and we're incredibly proud to be one part of this amazing group effort. So in front of you, you can see a lot of the people who were involved in this. It's energy industry from PECO to Community College of Philadelphia. And you think, well, Community College of Philadelphia, are they really energy industry? Well, they're training folks who are entering the energy industry, the Department of Energy. And then, folks who you wouldn't necessarily think would be part of an energy curriculum, but it turned out were super important. Folks like Tina at Favor. And I think that we really need to think about the social support systems we need in place when we are educating youth who are going through a lot of issues in their community. And I would really be remiss not to talk about some of the issues that have made national news, unfortunately, in Philadelphia: gun violence and violence in our communities and at our schools. Having folks who can say, you know what, we need you concentrating on solar, but we recognize that there's a lot going on in your community and a lot of trauma that's happened in the past, and we can't have you focusing on this without making sure that you're also dealing with the situation that's all around you. And one of the early lessons that I learned in this training industry is that as an environmentalist, we weren't focusing enough on the problems that were right in front of people. We were thinking, oh, the polar ice caps are melting and polar bears are dying. But, for somebody whose best friend was shot, yesterday, or who can't afford the apartment that they live in any longer, there are more immediate issues. And that's what this training is about at its core is, yes, you're entering the energy industry. Yes, you are going to get great solar training, but it's also about changing the narrative around violence in our communities, that there is opportunity. And I've seen that in solar states where we've had students who have come through these various nonprofit partners, from PowerCore to ECA to Youth Build, and have now come through our corporation, our company, and they are leaders of our commercial teams now, of our residential install teams. They have cars, they have houses, families. And the path that led them there was one where maybe they were previously incarcerated. Maybe they were doing things out in the street where they knew that didn't have a great future. And now they do see the future that is very different. And that is a very powerful effect that we can have on our communities. Next slide, please. So some of the tasks or ways that we got here was by reviewing national and existing programs for solar. We had a great partner with the ECA to tackle the weatherization pieces. And then, as Emily mentioned, we formed the OAC. So that OAC was really instrumental in talking about, okay, we need to have these standards and these technologies included in the curriculum in order to in order for it to be effective. And by the way, I really hope that the long term of this curriculum is that it is a living document, because this is an industry that is changing by the moment. I was just at a conference in California, and the new technologies that came out at that conference that I was like, oh, wow, we got to start integrating that stuff, and clients and people are going to want that. It's just enormous and immense. So this really has to be a living document going forward, and we intend it to be that as we keep adding as the industry changes. And that's so important. It's also a story about the electrification of America, that we are really electrifying every part of our lives. Somebody said to me the other day, did you ever think that, currency would be electrified? And I was thinking to myself, my goodness, Bitcoin, right, needs energy, electricity. And we need to make sure that we're making all of that electricity renewable. And then the last piece about it is, how are you a good teacher? How can you deliver this in a way that students will really be ready and most likely to accept the information that you're giving to them? And that's where the Philadelphia Education Fund came in. Bill Richards, Nancy Peters, those folks really did a wonderful job of training the trainers, so to speak, of this is how good teaching is done, and reviewing what we were doing. So we really covered a lot of different pieces as we were developing this curriculum to try to make sure we were covering all of our bases. Next slide, please. So you've heard a bit about the process. Now, what that process led to is a 3-year curriculum, essentially. And it's broken out into several parts, into scope and sequence, syllabi, and then lesson plans, as well as a final project that students can complete. And the idea here is that we're sort of building one year after another. We're scaffolding our way up to students being able to install solar and a battery system themselves in a lab at a school. And I think, as I think of myself as a learner in school, there was a lot of classroom time, and that's really not where I excelled. Unfortunately, I was not a great student, to my parents' dismay. We looked at students who learned a bit differently, and we tried to take a very hands-on approach. You'll see in a lot of these photos, students are on the roof, they're drilling things in, they're doing things with their hands, and we wanted to make sure that that was deeply integrated into the curriculum we were writing, and taking this in a bit of a reverse way that is normally the way things are taught. Usually people get theory and then they get hands-on, and we figured that with the students that we're approaching, we want to get hands-on very early, so they get that experience, they get that success of actually putting things together and then sprinkling the theory in as we go along. So that's a little overview of the curriculum that we've developed here. Next slide, please. So what's inside of it? As I mentioned, first and foremost is the hands-on stuff. And I highly encourage anyone who's considering adopting this curriculum to come and talk with us, come and talk with the PEA about what's going to be needed or what is most likely to make this successful. Because things like having a training roof in your classroom that's just an unbelievable resource. If you have a roof you can go on where students can learn about rafters and construction principles and all that sort of stuff, then that really unlocks a lot of the curriculum. Also understanding electrical codes and safety standards, super, super important. But this is all in the service of, okay, we want to design a solar array for somebody's house. And how do we do that? And a lot of people think, well, okay, if we're doing this, solar installation is the job I want to get into. But that's not necessarily true. There are lots of different jobs in the solar industry, and we try to encompass that in the curriculum so that people aren't just thinking about solar installation, but hey, we need people who can fly drones. We need electrical engineers. We need folks who can do site surveys. There's really a very wide range of folks that we hope to include in this. And inclusion is a key part of this curriculum. How do we get everybody involved in this stuff? Safety standards, really, really important. And then last but not least, we've got to have somebody who understands the systems, but is able to sell them as well, who can go out there and explain them in plain wording to clients so that they are interested in buying. And by the way, this is the biggest piece to solar taking off in the United States. It's just education, it's sales. It's letting people know that this opportunity is out there for them to save money and to save the planet and create jobs for their community. So many people still don't know it, let alone students coming into our classes. It's amazing how many students coming into a solar class really just haven't heard of solar before. It's not this thing that's been around and a part of our lives for a long time. And then after you've made the sale, obviously it's got to go through a process where you get permits and you do drawings and all sorts of things prior to the installation, procurement of goods. So we try to cover all of this as part of the curriculum. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have all sorts of resources that are included here. Not only is there hands-on training that's available. Again, I mentioned the training roof. We also have a pretty cool electrical system. Again, I got to give a shout out to Nika for hooking up the electrical work in the classroom. But there are online learning resources, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel here. There are lots of great training opportunities through wonderful organizations like Heat Spring, Enphase's Solar University, Solar Edge. There's really great trainings out there, not to mention stuff, great information on YouTube. So we have tons of links throughout the curriculum to these sorts of resources. And this is all in the service of getting students prepared to take what's called their NABCEP Associate Certificate exam. NABCEP stands for the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. It's a terrible mouthful for students to have to remember, but it's a good credential for them to have entering the industry. And as I said, weatherization is a big part of solar and what we want to do with homes, because we want homes to use as little energy as humanly possible. And then we supply that energy from renewable sources like solar. So the ECA did a wonderful job of taking students to their facility and showing them what energy efficiency means and how you can make homes more energy efficient. Next slide, please. So I'm excited to announce that it's all downloadable. You can get it all now. The discount price of $19. No, I'm just kidding. It's absolutely free. It's an amazing resource. Make sure you take a look at it. We've spent some time with the team and tried to get it laid out in a really easy to digest fashion. So we're super excited that all of this is now downloadable at the PEA's website. You can scan the QR code on your screen. Shanique, am I handing off here, or?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Micah. All of the tools are available. For those of you who have questions out there, we are going to drop a link in the chat for you to submit your questions. But at this time, we are going to talk about Bright Solar Futures at Frankford High School with Najwa Smith.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Najwa Smith. I'm an industry development specialist with the School District of Philadelphia, which means that I have a roster of programs for whom I do a lot of grants compliance legwork, to be quite honest, in making sure that the programs are aligned with what the district and state and feds, quite honestly, because there's a lot of federal funding tied up in our programs, making sure that we're staying on the right side of what they think the programs how they should work. So I have to say that first and foremost, I would be remiss in allowing anyone watching this webinar to believe that the School District of Philadelphia could have managed such a successful start to the program without the support of the Department of Energy, the Philadelphia Energy Authority, all of our installer partners. The wealth of resources that were brought to bear on this program were immense, right? The school district has a number of CTE programs that are sort of homegrown and work fabulously, but this was not one of them. I think Micah sort of alluded to all of the folks who were at the table from the very start, and that is a tremendous asset. So for districts that are looking to do this, my greatest recommendation is to assemble your team well ahead of time and go from there. Because again, this would have been an incredibly heavy lift were the school district to try and figure it out on its own. But as it was, the city said we need more folks involved in this world, and they came to the school district. So just a couple of sort of nuts and bolts and how we came to cite the program at Frankford High School. I think in the very early slides, it was mentioned that, the Bright Solar Futures initiative overall is really about looking at underserved communities, maybe low employment communities, and really thinking about equity in general. And all of those really are descriptive of Frankford High School. And so if you know anything about the school district of Philadelphia, all of Frankfurt just seemed sort of a neighborhood that could really plug into the goals of the program in terms of who it would serve. And then the other piece of it obviously was an absolutely the innovation mindset of the administrator. Dr. Calderon had a desire to really create a destination program at Frankford High School. So I think it was very important to the school district to really locate anything of this nature in a neighborhood high school, right? To not throw it at a magnet or not make it a charter, but to make it accessible, to make it equitable, and to really serve a community where there's a real need for workforce development. So all of those things sort of came together in that. The other thing that I would mention to districts who are thinking about implementing something along the lines of these high school programs is to think about where you position it in your roster. One of the questions that came up for us very early in the school district is, well, is this a construction program? Do we put it with all of our construction programs, or do we put it in natural sciences? And we chose to really cite it under the natural resource management cluster of programs, as opposed to pure construction, because we did want to emphasize that this is really about the green economy. It's not just a plug and play, and I don't mean that to disparage any of the construction programs, but that this really was about a mindset that we would be trying to develop in the students around the green economy. And the other piece of that is that we wanted to make sure that we emphasize that there's a wealth of opportunities around solar, right? It's not just installing. There's sales, there's research and development, there's marketing, right? There are all these other places that our graduates could find themselves in this industry. So that was a very deliberate thing on the part of the school district, and something that I think was very meaningful. If you want to advance the slide, there are just a couple of shots of students in action. On the left, there is a shot of some of the students in the actual lab at Frankfurt. If you are a Perkins receiving institution and you're trying to implement this program, also recognize the need to really fundraise. Right, Perkins money is wonderful. We all love to get it, but this program was not inexpensive to implement, right? And again, our partners, these panels were, most of the panels in the program that the students are working on are donated, right? So you really want to think about where those resources are coming from. And again, we were so blessed in this context. On the right, there is a picture just of, you saw Mr. Micah speaking earlier, our students, and then on the left in the jacket, it's like the only time I've ever seen Mr. Crawley in a jacket. That's our teacher. And he's out there hustling and getting his kids in and getting his kids involved and getting his kids on roofs. And again, Mr. Micah, I feel like they're co-teachers, because Micah spent so much time in the classroom this fall. What's going on in the next slide? And then again, the idea that the school this is a shot outside of the school, right? The idea of bringing things outside of the classroom. We have a fabulous classroom. We love it, right? But to the degree to which we can get the kids outside of the building and get the neighborhood engaged in what is happening, right? Inside the school and in this world. That is going to be an ongoing challenge, right? Again, just making sure that not only are we educating the students, but that the community knows that this opportunity is there. And on the right, again, some of the kids in the lab, on the roof, safety gear in place. Yay, I was the nudge who was like, where's your helmet, Carlos, right? So thus far, we're in what, our third year of in-person learning, or second year of going into our second year of in-person learning at the school. And it really has been an amazing sort of alchemy that has really come together to make this happen. But at the core is really the community and the OAC members, again, the installers. Micah mentioned it, but the attention paid by favor to getting to know the students and meet them where they are in terms of socio-emotional issues is huge. And so it's been a nice ride for the school district. In this case, we've really been able to depend on our partners to a degree much greater than in many of our programs. But again, it really just goes back to that innovation mindset by Dr. Calderon, who's the principal at Frankford, and the positioning of the school at that intersection of the priorities of the PEA and BSF, which again is looking at underserved communities, that workforce development in low employment sectors, and really sort of connecting those dots, keeping Micah, I can attest to what Micah said. As an environmentalist, in many cases, that's not necessarily where we look to build momentum, but it certainly is somewhere we ought to be paying increased attention to. So I don't know what's the next slide. Yeah, we're gonna move on to the Power Core Opportunity Youth, which is the adult programming. So.
Thanks you, Najwa. We are going to hear from Gentis from Power Core.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gentris Joint. I'm the Assistant Director of Workforce Development at Power Core PHL. I'll talk a little bit about our involvement in this program. Here's a wonderful picture of some of our alumni, as you can see, participating in the training. Next slide, please. So how the Opportunity Youth Fellowship with Power Core worked is that our organization brings in young people ages 18 to 30, many of whom have had contact with the criminal legal system. They go through a foundational training program with us, where they receive, workforce development training, access to supportive services, as well as some technical training. And from there, they have an opportunity to transition into higher level training to gain even more career exposure, get more work experience, and have continued access to supportive services and professional development training and career counseling. And so that's the role that Bright Solar played for us. It was one of our pathways that our young people could transition into from our foundation program. To tell you a little bit more, about how we connected here. We provided support both with outreach and recruitment. So not only were we helping to transition folks who were already enrolled as Power Core members, but we were also helping to recruit for Bright Solar from the general public. While folks were engaged in Bright Solar with us, they had the opportunity to participate in a number of different professional development workshops along a wide range of topics, including DEI, understanding sexual harassment, interview skills, resume and cover letter writing, and more. Next slide, please. So there was really, in terms of our involvement, two halves of the training that folks received in Bright Solar Futures with us. They had technical training, which they received from Solar States and the ECA, which was focused on content knowledge, especially preparation for the NABCEP, and practical applications of the information that they were learning, and of course exposure to the many different pathways within the solar field. We heard a lot from our partners who spoke earlier about how it's not just solar installation, but also sales, electrical work, research and development, and so on. And so a lot of that exposure and education on those topics was really with our partners with Solar States and the ECA. On our end, it was really focused on soft skill development, building transferable skills, how to adapt to different work environments, time management, initiative and self-direction, conflict management, meeting etiquette, problem solving, but we also work to help bridge folks to further opportunities, transitioning from the technical training they were receiving in Bright Solar to moving into internships where they can continue to develop their skills and access quality employment at the entry level. The reason that the Bright Solar Futures program made so much sense for us is that it's a natural fit for the things that we as an organization are trying to accomplish, as are many of our partners on this call, and that's to connect young people to meaningful opportunities where they can earn livable, family-sustaining wages, where they can avoid recidivism, improve their lives and the lives of the community, even as they work on saving the planet and accessing not just high quality jobs, but high quality jobs in the green sector. And so, this was a really successful program, in our view, one that we were happy to be a part of. And, I have the great pleasure of, seeing our roster of many graduates who have gone on to employment in different roles within the solar field.
Thank you, Gentris. Resource development. I know you guys have to hear this reoccurring theme of partnership, this really utilizing the collective impact model, this government, public-private relationship, just really elevating this work. Resource development was a big part of it. Next slide, please. $1.44 million total investment in Bright Solar Futures. Next slide, please. What did this include? Our Bright Solar Future curriculum development, the Opportunity Youth Fellowship pilots, the CTE program at Frankford High School, the state-of-the-art solar lab at Frankfurt, which we are so proud of, in our summer enrichment program this year for 2022. This was not made possible without our partners. Really want to, if it was not for partners like our lead sponsor, PECO, who really led the way, which helped us raise significant additional funds from other partners like Soul Systems and Next Tracker. Our partners like ECA, who leverage their resources. We're talking about banding funding, right? Banding resources, leveraging the expertise of each of these partners really to impact and create layered services for people who have layer barriers associated with poverty and other obstacles. Next slide, please. So who funds training? Solar training programs, right? So this is like my favorite. It seems like everyone, right? The U.S. Department of Energy, Solar Energy Technology Office, CETO, was a large funder. The U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Labor and Employment and Training. These are these high growth, bright outlook jobs that we are creating opportunities and preparing people for. Workforce investment boards utilize those individual training assignments, those ITAs for participants, especially in these OPY groups that are 18 and older. Private donors, and again, our foundations leverage these the research, follow the data. In Pennsylvania, solar has outpaced all other occupations combined. So this is truly a training program that you can put in front of various funders to come together to make this happen. It's not easy, but it's growing. We are making this clean energy transition in Philadelphia, and we hope to help you do the same too. Next slide. All of your questions, please submit them to the link in the chat. Scan the QR code. We want to really thank you for participating in this webinar. We will launch a complete website where you can download the entire 3-year curriculum, one that will be updated as the industry grows. And again, on behalf of the Philadelphia Energy Authority and all of our partners and those funders who supported this work, we want to thank you for joining us, and please feel free to reach out through the link. Have a great afternoon and a bright solar future.